Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video as we build from free plans in the description this mini foam board Lazy Bee. Let's get to it.
Yep. Perfect.
Lazy Bee is an iconic sport flyer, fun, relaxing, easy to fly. It was first published in 1996 in RC Modeler magazine. Literally thousands of variants have been built, gas motors, electric, to include some very large-scale versions, just super easy to fly, relaxing. In this video, we will make a smaller model of the Lazy Bee using 3/16" foam board. 3/16" foam board. This is it right here. There is a link to this model to include free plans in the description. And it was a lot of fun. It flew very well. And what I did was I simply took a design plan off the internet, printed out on my printer, and just enlarged all the dimensions times 6 to come up with this size right here. Because I enjoyed this a lot, I thought, well, why don't we try a smaller version of the Lazy Bee? And what I did was I'm going to take the same plan, I'm going to make it 50% size. In other words, all the dimensions be times 3 instead of times 6. This is a plan that I use. I just downloaded off the internet. Again, it's available in the description if you want to download it. And I just used as a multiplication factor 3. So any dimension that I measured here, for example, this from here to here, the midsection of the wing was 3. I multiplied times 3 to come up with 9 inches. So I have the full scale dimensions. This was 2 inches wide, times 3 is 6 inches, that I sketched out on the foam board and cut out to build this version of the Lazy Bee. This is the 3/16" foam board I use, a 30 by 20 inch sheet. So as I mentioned, it's mostly straight lines of the Lazy Bee, a few curves that I just sketched in by hand for the elevator and the fin. These are, excuse me, the parts that I've done. This is the fuselage right here. You can see that sketched out. I did take the paper off the foam on the inside just to save a little bit of weight with notches here. So it'll go together like this. And I had, out of foam board, made these formers. So tomorrow I'll glue them all together to make the fuselage like this. This is the firewall right here with the front former that will go. I'll glue this on. This will be in front. And again, this is the motor that I'll use for that. Details are all in the description. And hopefully this motor will be big enough to fly this airplane. It's a motor I've used before on 20-inch wingspan square flyers. I think it'll be enough power. The other portions I've made are the wing. This is the wing center section. These are the 2 outer tips that will go like this, and they'll be glued into place onto the wing. And what I've done is a little bit different on this model is the airfoil. So on the larger foam Lazy Bee, I had basically a Clark Y airfoil. On this one, I made a little notch right here. I intend just to bend the wing. This is about 25% back, and this is going to be my rib right here. I think this is close enough for an airfoil shape for this type of model. Should fly okay. I think the model would fly with a flat wing, but I'm going to add just a little bit of a shape for the airfoil like that. And again, I'll glue all that together tomorrow. So all the parts are together. I did take paper off certain sections like the lower half of the wing to save a little bit of weight. This is a small enough wingspan. There's no need for a reinforcing carbon fiber rod for the wing or the tail surfaces. So I think I've kept the weight fairly low. Always concerned about the center of gravity. We'll see how that goes. I've kept the motor fairly forward along with the battery, and we'll just figure that out as we go along. For the components of the model, again, I showed you the motor and electronic speed control. These are the high-tech HS40 servos. They're pretty lightweight servos. It'll be a 3-channel model, elevator, rudder, and throttle control. And again, just a pretty basic proof of concept to see how it works in this size. And if we like the way it works, we can build another one with just more detail and added components if necessary. So this is the beginning of the construction of the fuselage. You can see the right side is here. The formers are in place. I've put the plywood for the firewall. Do pre-drill the holes for your motor before you glue it in. The other side of the fuselage is glued in place. You can see the firewall and the little side coverings of the nose cowl, and the tail is creased and glued in the back to make the end of the fuselage. This is a first look at the wing. This is the center section. The wingspan is 18 inches. This is the 9-inch center section. I use triangular ribs. I creased it 25% back for an airfoil. It seemed to work pretty good. It makes it a little bit easier building the wing. You'll have to place the 2 center ribs where they glue onto the fuselage side. Just make sure those measurements line up. With this smaller model, gluing on the wing works fine. Here's the completed wing, and you can see the tips are in place with the required dihedral. I think I used about 2 inches for the dihedral, the wing tips. Just have to trim to fit those in place, and they're glued. I did remove the paper from the underside of the wing. Not sure that's necessary to save weight. Here are the side portions of the nose glued in place over the by the firewall, the foam on top of the rear deck, and the stabilizer glued in place. I just use hot glue for most of the construction. These are the elevator halves. I did use 5-minute epoxy for this and a small dowel to connect the 2 halves. As a jig to line it up, I just used a piece of straight foam board to let that glue into place, and that will work for the 2 elevator halves. This is a rear view of the fuselage. You can see the control surfaces are held in place by masking tape. I think that worked out just fine. Be sure to bevel the edges of the rudder and the elevator so it can go up and down. About a 45-inch bevel works out fine. Another view of the firewall in place and just the free-floating control surfaces. It works out fine for the tail surfaces. The motor is screwed into place. I use washers for a little bit of right and down thrust because there's always going to be some error putting in the firewall. These are the electrical components. I used a 2-cell LiPo and just a 15 amp electronic speed controller AR620 receiver. I pretty much finished my mini Lazy Bee. Here it is right here. Weight came out with the battery, 2-cell LiPo at 4.8 ounces. That is fine with me. Just some temporary tape on there for test flights, and what I did was I will eventually glue this wing on to the small size, but I want to show you what it looks like inside. So here is the interior. It's 1.5 inches wide. If you make yours, you may consider doing it 2 inches. You'll have a little bit more space in here. Electronic speed control, receiver, and the servos. I deliberately left the bottom open to both save weight and have access to the servos. They're located right here. I have to glue this back on a little bit more. Just the landing gear more for looks than anything else, and the battery slides right in here. The motor is a standard mount. This is the center of gravity. It balances pretty close to that, and just with the rudder and elevator. So that is the model. Again, the wing is just a very simple with those kind of triangle ribs, and that'll be the wing here. So let's plug it in. We'll show how the control surfaces work, and then when we get some good weather, I may give it a test flight, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So this is the battery that I'm using. It slides in very nicely inside here. I'm not going to bother doing that now, but that's where it'll go, and I'll shift it back and forth to make the center of gravity. But what I want to do is show you the controls. Up, down, and then the important thing is how much thrust is there. Now note the propeller is such, I can't do any ground takeoffs. We'll do a hand launch, but there should be plenty of thrust. So I don't think there's any problem with that. One other thing that I wanted to point out with the construction is with the wing, you want to have a little bit of positive incidence. So in other words, if this is the top of the fuselage, don't keep the wing level of the fuselage. It should be a little bit positive incidence built onto the airplane. This is normal with full-size aircraft. So what I did was just about a 1/4 inch higher going this way as I did the top of the fuselage. So that way when I glue the wing in place, it'll have a little bit of positive incidence. That's very common for sport aircraft like this. A full stunt aircraft, you might keep it 0-0, but a little bit of positive incidence will help with something like that. So that's where we are, and built it in 2 days, and we'll see how it flies. So now it's a good idea to put some paint onto your mini Lazy Bee. I just got this picture off the internet. There's any number of pictures of the Lazy Bee. And here is the plane. I use standard acrylic poster board paints, and I just paint directly onto either the paper covering or the foam. I just sketch out with a pencil a rough idea of where the lines will be for the paint scheme, and then just paint directly onto the foam or paper covering, and it works out pretty good. And you can paint right over the hinges as well. That works out just fine. And here's a completed Lazy Bee with a green and yellow paint scheme, and just adds for a little bit of fun for your finished product. So out here at the field is a perfect day for flying. This is the mini Lazy Bee with a ×3 enlargement factor. So 4.8 ounces, I think the weight's okay. I think it'll have enough power. As we mentioned, the prop is long, so we'll have to hand launch it. And my son Michael is here to help out with that. And we'll see if this flies. This is the test flight of the mini Lazy Bee. I did it unpainted just because that's the way the schedule worked out with the weather. My son Michael did a great job with the hand launch, and here's another view of that initial maiden flight. Plenty of power for the plane. You can see it's going almost straight up. I throttled back. The 3 channels of control, there's no ailerons. It settled out very nicely to wings level flight. And I was comfortable enough on this maiden flight to reduce throttle, get a little bit lower, so we got some better shots of the mini Lazy Bee flying around. It handled very well. I was very comfortable. If I got a little bit slow, added power, it climbed right up. Just a very nice flying aircraft. I encourage anybody to give it a try. This is the maiden flight. It went so well, I'm presenting this maiden flight uncut. There's no edits on here. Yep. Enjoy, and we will see you at the end.
Yep. Perfect.
So that was the maiden flight. Very happy the way it flew. It was responsive. It was a little bit twitchy when you added power, but that's we're just gonna have to learn how to fly it with a few practice sessions. But it handled well. I was very satisfied. You saw the landing at the end. It's a nice little model, so we'll go ahead and paint it up and look forward to future flights with the mini Lazy Bee. Well, this is a completed painted foam board Lazy Bee. Just put on a couple of colors from a picture I found on the internet. Again, with the acrylic paints, it's very easy to do with the foam board. So as you saw with the flight video, the test flight was yesterday before the paint. The plane really flew well. It was a little bit squirrely with full power, but once you throttled back and got used to its handling characteristics, I think it flew right. A little bit of positive incidence helps with the wing. The polyhedral on the wingtips helps keep it level. There was plenty of power with the motor. I have a little bit of down and right thrust, which I think is about right, and the weight of 4.8 ounces. I think everything came together nicely. So this is a fun little thing to do, just a small amount of foam board. I built this in 2 days. Just throw it in the car, fly it, and you can go fly. So best of luck with your build if you try to do it. And again, free plans are available for download. mistake people lose, they have it go straight up now if I'm scrambling.
Sure, am I going to use two hands?
Probably one hand would be good.
All right, well, Katie and I coming down for a brief visit to Georgia. Thank you so much for bringing us out to the RC model field. So we've obviously seen it a bunch in the YouTube videos, so it's nice to actually drive out here and see the range, see the field, and get to see a couple of flights and a crash.
And to get to participate in all of the fun activities. So thanks for inviting us.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.